building analytics tools to test assumptions. So I really wanted to test the question, do AI startups survive, right? So I think it really depends on who you ask, but the assumption for a lot of people is there's so much money going into AI startups that of course they survive. And then if you ask somebody else, they might say most of what's being built out there is AI slop, so no, they don't survive. Well, let's test it. So here is how I wanted to test that. Looking at Product Hunt, right? They basically archive their leaderboard, right? So that means you can look at the past top ranked new products on their site. So I picked a year ago, December of 2024, and wanted to basically look at all of the Product Hunt launches that made the leaderboard in December of 2024 and look to see if they're still around. How? By looking at their websites. First, decipher whether or not it's an AI company. And then once those are sectioned off, then look to see, is the website still there? Is the website that's there still representative of what they offered on Product Hunt? Like, is it the same company? Are they doing the same stuff? Or did they have to pivot? Or is there a sign on the site landing page that says, sorry, we're shuttering business? Or is the domain for sale? So I decided to work with AI to build a couple of simple scripts that did that. Let me show you how. All right, so first things first, I start on a notepad. I knew that I wanted to scrape Product Hunt, so I knew I was gonna have to copy some elements, so let me go over that real fast. Here was the beginning of my prompt. I wanna build a small program that assesses whether AI startups survive, the idea, and then I explain the idea of scraping Product Hunt, specifically the leaderboard page from a year ago, and see if the business is still active. How to do this, I suggested that we build a playwright script, gather all of the URLs for these businesses. I gave the prompt some elements. So how I did that, Chrome developer tools. Basically, I went to the leaderboard page, the first page, which is December 1st of 2024. Clicked on the first card here for a Product Hunt product. Right click, inspect. And then I wanted to find that whole section. So I just took this whole div, copy element, and then I put it right there. So that's the leaderboard listing element. And then I needed to get the element for this, but whenever I open up DevTools, which is F12, it disappears, turns into a calendar. So I don't know if that's like mobile view or something. So I had to come to Firefox and then inspect there. And then I'm not able to get the element using Firefox DevTools. So I right-clicked and copied the CSS selector and CSS path. And I put those there, the selector for the day of the month link and the path for the day of the month link. And then finally, come back to Chrome and then actually click into one of these and then grab the element for this button, because this is where they're going to get the URL. I put that right there. And then, this was the original plan. Then use Google Gemini URL context to grab the text from the product page to see if it's still active, et cetera, et cetera. I wanted to use Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite because it's a really, really inexpensive and fast model. Anyway, so I actually copied and pasted the document, the API documentation for the URL context, just to make sure. You would assume that Gemini already knows this, but they don't. So just to make sure, I just copied and pasted that inside of my prompt. And then that was it. I took that and then I put that inside of Google Gemini AI Studio. That was the prompt, the whole thing, including that API documentation for the tool. And I just asked it to tell me, read over this, acknowledge you understand what I want to accomplish. And then it gave me a summary or whatever. And then the next thing is how I want to proceed, walk me through each step. Do not produce the next step until I've acknowledged that I've created the file or inserted the code from the previous step. And I want to run this in a virtual environment. And this is the machine I'm working with. Windows 11, I'm using PowerShell. So that it doesn't continuously give me commands for both a Mac and a Windows machine, or give me things that don't work inside of PowerShell. It just makes it easier. And then, hey, we're going to do this step by step. So step one, open PowerShell. So it basically told me how to create the folder and then how to open PowerShell inside of that folder and then create the virtual environment. So here's what that looks like. Under code projects here, I created this folder, right click, and then open in terminal. And then that opens up PowerShell for me inside of that folder. And then the first instruction was Python mvenv. This creates a virtual environment, which is what I did right here. And then this activates the virtual environment, which is what I did right here. The next step is going to be to install dependencies. So once I confirmed that the virtual environment was activated, then it told me, okay, the next step is to install these dependencies, which I did here and then here. Anyway, once the dependencies were in, the next step was to start creating program files. So basically we went back and forth for a little while. It gave me the scraper code, and then I let it know that I ran it or that I created it, and now I want to run it for a single day to make sure it works. So it told me how to change the file so that happened. And then of course I got an error, or I didn't get an error. It found 0 products. We, back and forth again, and it was like, oh, you got to change this little thing. Maybe it'll work then. And then what was happening, basically, to spare you kind of the boring details, what was happening was it was making a browser window pop up, and it was going to use that. But the problem is Product Hunt puts up a little CAPTCHA thing that says, prove that you're a human. And that kept happening. And so the solution was, oh, we're just going to use your actual Chrome browser then, instead of like a machine Chrome browser. Okay, we'll try that. The problem there is it still wasn't working. And we found out the reason why was because I needed to basically kill all instances of Chrome. Now I had closed out of every Chrome browsing tab, but it turns out there were some extensions that were working in the background. It took us a couple back and forths before Gemini was like, hey, this might be the problem. What you need to do is run this PowerShell command that basically shuts all Chrome activity down, which it should have gave me in the first place. And then check this URL. And if you don't see anything, then it still doesn't work. If you do see something, then we can move to the next step. And then that finally got it to work. And then it was like, okay, now we can create the scraper Python script that does the full scrape. So after we went through, failure, and it finally got it to work, it scraped every page for the entire month of December and grabbed all of the URLs for every Product Hunt product launch that month, December 2024. At the end of it, whenever it was done running and it found 338 products, it saved it to a file inside of here. So that was this products December 2024.json. Okay, so after that worked, I come back and say, hey, 338 products identified. It worked. Cool. Now we need to do the AI analysis. And this is where we built the whole Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite URL context situation. Unfortunately, we did a lot of back and forth there too because it didn't work. Every time we try, basically Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite it's a really capable model, but it struggles really hard with the right output structure. I mean, it completely messes up the output structure more often than not. So if you're relying on it to adhere to a very specific structure, you're going to run into problems like I did. So it kept failing, or it kept the failure rate was too high, right? So it would run through each of these URLs, and then it would be unknown or not found over and over again. And I would keep coming back and being like, yo, I don't think it's supposed to be this way. And the Gemini kept tweaking the code a little bit, and we tried again, and it didn't work until finally Gemini was like, look, the URL context tool is just not working, but you already have Playwright, so you really should just use that to scrape these pages. And the reason I was trying to avoid doing that in the first place was just in case they had all of that, CAPTCHA protection that Product Hunt has. But whatever, obviously the Gemini path wasn't going to work. It might have if I had tried a more capable model, but instead I wanted to try it this way. We'll go with your suggestion, Gemini. So we changed the analyze.py Python program to use Playwright to basically grab the first 15,000 characters and give that to Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite to assess. And what it was looking for is, is the domain active still? In the text, is it the same business? Is it the same product and offering that was launched inside of Product Hunt? The first thing it checked was, is this an AI company at all, right? So that was the first thing. Filter out everything that's not an AI company. And then from the AI companies, look and make sure that they're still around from a year ago offering what they were offering. Or if they had to pivot, that's considered a fail. Or if they're shutting down, obviously that's considered a fail. Or if the domain's for sale, that's obviously a fail too. So that's what it was looking for. So we changed analyze.py. After we fixed that, it ran. It ran all the way through all 338 pages, determined whether or not it was AI, whether or not it was alive, or in some few cases, whether or not it was unknown because the data just wasn't there. I ran all the way through. The process being playwright scrapes, gives it to Gemini 2.5 Flash Lite, and gets the answer back. Because it didn't have to be in exactly the right structure, the same structure, this worked because it's totally capable of doing this, and it was pretty fast too, so I was happy with that. Anyway, now once I had this data, I had to read it. I had to figure out what was going on here, but luckily Gemini thought ahead for that and had already created a report.py. So this ended up being 3 Python scripts, right? The original scraper, the second scraper, and then the report, which is designed just to read the output file and come up with a score. So it had already given me that, so I had to scroll up and grab that and then run that, which is right here. And then it gave me an assessment, the score basically. And I think you'll find the results kind of surprising. Like, I didn't expect it to be this way. I feel like a lot of people are on 2 different ends of the fence, right? So either AI companies are all failing or AI companies have a ton of money, but the numbers are still, regardless of what side of the fence you're on, the numbers are still pretty impressive. AI Startup Survival Report. Total AI products analyzed 172. So out of the 338 total products that were launched in December 2024 on Product Hunt, 172 were determined to be AI. And alive and kicking are 158, with 12 dead, pivoted, and only 2 unknown but likely dead, so they're considered to be dead. The survival rate is almost 92%. That means that 91.86% of all of the product launches that happened on Product Hunt in December 2024 that were AI companies are still around. That doesn't mean that they're thriving. It doesn't mean that they're profitable, but they haven't shuttered, which is awesome. So here was the list of the confirmed dead / pivoted, and then the 2 unknown. But yeah, so 92% survival rate. Even for proponents of AI, I feel like that's kind of a surprising number. So yeah, there you go. So data analysis brought to you by vibe-coded internal tools, quickly produced in Google Gemini using Python scripts. Again, this one took a little bit longer than the last one because of all those failures and having to pivot in the middle of it. So this took about half an hour, 40 minutes. But there you go. Hopefully that was helpful or at least entertaining. Be well and do good things.